Good afternoon, everyone. Let's get started. Today, we are going to talk about arrays and strings. These are what we're going to talk about today. First, I'm going to talk about the course logistics and then introduce arrays and strings. And then I'm going to summarize this lecture. First, course logistics. Homework 3 is out today. And during class, I give you PPP exercises. And I just want to know how many of you are trying to solve those problems I'm giving during the lecture. And I'm going to ask you to send me PPP message before you tackle those problems that I give you in the middle of the class. Then I will, let's say, receive like 10 PPP exercise, 10 PPP messages from students. Then I'll just wait around 6 to 7 students who have sent me PPP message gave me the answers. So the logic is like this. First, if you want to solve PPP exercises that I'm giving you during the lecture, send me PPP message. And then when you're done, send your answers to me. And I'll wait for 60 to 70 of you and then move on to the solution part. Okay. And regarding last time's feedback, course feedback, thank you for sharing your opinions. Like more than 40% of you think the course is somewhat demanding or challenging. If that is the case, please ask a lot of questions. If you don't ask questions, then I cannot understand where you are undergoing difficulties, and I cannot explain those parts. So if you have any questions or something is not clear, please don't hesitate to ask questions. Or you can use recitations or TA office hours or my office hours, okay? Any questions regarding course logistics? Okay, let's move on. I don't know, is it because of the pre-recorded lectures or the mood is somewhat different? But last year and last year, students asked a lot of questions, and this year, you guys are not asking questions. So I thought you guys are considering this lecture is somewhat easy or something like that. But when I did this course feedback, I was surprised that like around 40% of you think this course is somewhat demanding or difficult. And I was shocked. So if something is not clear, please ask questions. Okay, let's talk about arrays. What are arrays? This is the picture of an array. In other languages such as Java, C, or C++, the only built-in method of storing collection of objects is an array. If you need anything more sophisticated, you need to use a data structure from a library. In case of C++, you need to include list to use list data structures. However, in Python, lists are a basic data structure. You don't have to do anything. You just use it. That's all. However, of course, the Python interpreter has implemented it with an array in advance. Python or C or C++, they all use computer resources. And under the hood, the basic mechanism of implementing lists or arrays is quite similar. And let's talk about array abstract data type. An array is a block of memory to store a fixed number of objects. Here, you need to be careful about this term, fixed. I guess most of you have experience with C or C++. When you're using C or C++, you first need to define the number of memory blocks you want to use to store some element or object. And that is for arrays. And in the case of lists, we don't specify the number of objects or number of memory blocks. However, some mechanism handles those automatic change of size of lists. And in the case of array, because it is a fixed memory block, it's not possible to resize the memory block. And the array size remains fixed once the array has been created. And the functionality of an array is we should be able to create an array with n slots using array n. Here, when we're constructing an array, we need to pass the parameter specifying how many memory blocks we want to use, or how many memory slots we want to use. And the second functionality of array ADT is getting the length of an array with len function. We need to support this functionality. And we should be able to access or modify the element at index I with this command. And we should be able to loop over the elements of an array A with 4 elements in A, like this. We did this in the Python primer class. Okay, let's implement array ADT. This class is data structure class, and among many languages, we are using Python. However, the concepts we are dealing at this class can be applicable to other languages. Therefore, you can think of the data structure concepts as ADT, and using some specific language to implement those ADTs is kind of data structures. So the concept and implementation. And the reason why we are implementing array in this class is to let you understand the array ADT, not Python list. So here we are going to use Python list to implement array, but it's not just about Python. It's about data structure concepts, okay? What I'm talking about will be clearer once we implement a basic array. Okay, let's first implement a basic array. First, let's write the test cases. In this ADT description, I told you that our constructor receives the parameter n, specifying the number of memory slots we want to assign. Because once it is created, we cannot change the size of the array. Let's say we want to create an array with 10 memory slots. And we should be able to assign some specific values to the index 0, like this. And we can also do the same thing for other positions like this. And when we don't assign any specific values, like the third element, then it will just print out none. Therefore, from this test case, we can infer that when we initialize this array, then it will be initialized with 10 nons. And next test case is going to be the len functionality. It will return the number of elements or the length of the array. And we can also print the test array. And it will print a nicely formatted array like this. And the last functionality we need to support is looping. Like for item in test array, then it will print out 5 non, and EC2202, non, like this. Okay. Right, we've written the test cases, and let's implement the constructor first. I told you that it will receive the size parameter, and we're going to set the size of this array as size, and we're going to store the elements in this Python list. So here we're using Python list to implement this array ADT. We're just simulating this array, although we are using Python list, okay? And this will behave as other normal arrays in other languages like C or C++ or Java. Okay, that is our first implementation of array. And let's check whether it works okay. Test array 10. And it doesn't cause any error. It's working perfectly. So we finished implementing the first part. However, we need to be careful about this. When we assign minus 10 units, it doesn't say anything, although minus memory slot is meaningless. Therefore, we are going to here add another assertion expression to check whether the size is larger than 0 or not. I'm going to print now array size must be larger than 0. Okay. After this, when we try to initialize the array size with minus numbers, then it will just print out that, oh, array size must be larger than 0. Okay. Here we are dealing a very basic error cases. Now it works okay. All right, what is the next thing? Next thing we're going to implement is this len functionality because it's simpler than these ones. To support the len functionality, we just need to implement this len special method. We're just implementing these special methods. It is preceded and ended with 2 underbars. And I showed you the list of all these functions, but we are using just some of them that are necessary for us. When you just implement this special method, then when you call some object, then Python will automatically bind this method to this one. So when you call this one, and this method will be called. And what is the size of this array? We just return self.size, this stored number. That's all we need to do. Okay, that was simple. And after this, we print len test array. Then it says the length is 10. However, if you just comment this out, then it says object of type array has no len. Okay, so by basically just implementing this special function, Python automatically binds this expression to this method. Okay, that is the second functionality. And what about the next functionality? We want to implement this assignment or this access retrieval behaviors. How can you do that? To do so, we need to implement getItem method. Here, we need to pass the index. And once we implement this one, this will be automatically bound to this functionality. Okay? We just return the elements at the index I. However, we also need to be careful about the index because the index should be larger than 0 and it should be less than the length of cell. Okay? And after implementing this one, we can now print test array, the 0th element, like this. It returns none. And how can you set some items at specific indices? That is done by implementing this set item. But before we implement this part, when we try to put some item at the index 3, it's gonna cause an error. The array object does not support item assignment. And to support that functionality, we just need to implement this set item method. Here we need to pass 2 parameters. The first one is the index, and the second one is the value we want to assign. Here we also need to assert I should be larger than 0, and I should be less than a length. Like this. Then we just perform the assignment functionality. And after implementing this set item functionality, now assignment works. And we can also print test array 3. Okay, perfect. So up to this point, we've implemented the creation function and getting length and accessing or modifying the elements at index I. So we've implemented these 3 parts. And before we move on to the next 4th functionality, let's first think about this functionality, printing function. 0.5. Okay, when we try to print the whole array like this, then it just prints the object at this address. And this is not what we want. We want this nice formative printing. And to support this, we need to implement def stir method. This is our first PPP exercise. Look at this and how you can implement this STIR method. Before you tackle this problem, please send me a PPP message, and then I'll wait until you finish. And when you're done, please send your answer to me again. All right, take some time and try to solve this first PPP exercise. I'll give you 1 more minute. Okay, let's solve this problem together. Thank you for sharing your answers. I guess most of you got the right answer. Um, this is pretty simple. In fact, we need to make this format. And to do so, we first start the string with array and opening parentheses like this. And for I in range length of self, we're going to just add to this string elements at index I. However, by just calling this, adding this one will not work. We need to convert this representation into stir, okay? And then we need to add this separation. However, in the beginning of this for loop, there is no separation. So we're going to add separation like this. And otherwise, the separation is going to be comma and space. And at the end, we're going to add the closing parenthesis like this. And we can return S like this. There is another way of implementing this stir method. So after implementing this part, it works well like this. Another way of implementing this one is using a special method supported for strings. I'll first give you the answer or other implementation, and then going to explain. Okay. Another implementation works like this. Array plus this separation here, and this is a string, and you can use a special method for string called join. And we can use the map function we learned. We map stir to self element, okay? And then we add the closing parentheses. So this works as well. And when we run this part, it displays the same result. And what did this join mean? I'll explain what this join means. Let's say our test list contains 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you guys all know that map stir, the test list, First, this map function maps this third function to each element of this test list. Therefore, each of these integers becomes strings like this. Then what about this join? And when we put some separator here and then call this join function, and here we need to pass a list like this. Then the items inside this list gets joined by this separator. So here I'm putting space here. So each elements are separated by this space. However, if I put semicolon like this, then these items will be semicolon separated. And the nice thing about this join function or join method is that for the first item, it does not include this separator. And we can nicely format this joined element. So basically what this join does is what we implemented here, okay? So this is another special method of Python. And this implementation and this implementation both are okay. The first one is sometimes called Pythonic implementation, and this one is just ordinary normal implementation. Okay, that was Bayesian array. And the last functionality we need to implement is this iteration. However, so for supporting this iteration, we need to implement this iter method. However, we are not going to discuss the detail of iteration, but I'll just show you the answer. In other languages, it is sometimes called iterator, C++ or Java. I'll just show you the answer and don't worry about it. I guess this is out of the scope of our course. And this will not be on the test, so don't worry about this, even though you don't understand this part. Anyway, you just need to understand that, oh, when we just implement this iter special method, then we can support iteration for our object. That's all you need to know. Okay, we've completed the implementation of arrays. Now we support all these functionalities like creation, assignment, setting new values, printing, getting the length. Okay. And that is our array. Any questions up to this point? Okay, there are some questions I'll answer. The first one was, shouldn't we use wrapper rather than stir? That is a good question. You can test it on your own after this class. And I'll show you the difference between wrapper and stir. Okay, in Python, we have two special methods related to string formatting. The first one is wrapper and stir. So let's create an object. And when we call stir of this object and wrapper of this object, they are somewhat different. So when we call stir, it is a format for human readable strings. And in the case of wrapper, when you call this one, then it will create the same object. Okay, and when you print, it is rather connected to stir, because stir is for human reading. And wrapper, as you can see here, is actually the representation, Pythonic representation of that object. So you can create the same object using this representation. That is a slight difference between wrapper and stir. And when we implement this part, stir, you can think about whether we need to use stir or wrapper. Okay, think about it on your own. That was a good question. And another question is, should the input of the join function be a map data type? It doesn't have to be map. I showed you that we can also feed a list. Basically, you can put lists like this. Here, we are also more precisely, we need to feed something iterable. That is what we need to pass to this join function. And Kyungmin, I don't understand the second question. What do you mean by function binding?
Can I speak in the mic?
I can barely hear you.
Is it right now?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Okay. What I mean that function binding was you said about the functions just like lang function that you said when you call the function and you put the instance in the input, the Python binds the function to the instance. I'm sorry, I couldn't understand exactly what you were trying to explain, so I was asking for another explanation.
I cannot understand your question. Can you ask your question after the class?
Okay, got it.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, let's move on. In Python, when we make a list like this, we can add new items like this. And however, our array we've implemented has a fixed size. So what we're going to do is implementing an array that can grow. All right, let's implement an array that can grow. We are going to implement the array that can grow based on the basic array we've implemented. Let's delete this part first. We're not going to talk about iteration. So let's say we want to implement a grow array that grows over time. And we're going to implement this grow array based on the basic array we've implemented. Because under the hood, what we can use is the basic array we've implemented. And using that basic array, we need to develop some new functionalities like arrays that can grow. The different thing between an array that can grow and the basic array is that we don't have to specify the size of this array. We can just initialize this array. So we're going to just remove this part. We don't have to specify the size of the array because we can grow the array. So we'll remove this part, remove this part, and we don't need this part as well. Let's say we just have an array, and first it will be just a none because it starts from length 0. Okay? And the len item is going to be len of self A, like this. And get item, you need to think about just the internal array, not like this. And we don't need set item because we're going to just append. Then how can you define the append method? When we want to append a new item, there are two cases we need to think about. The first case is it is the first time appending an item. Therefore, our array is empty at the moment. So if the array is empty, none, we need to create an array like this. And we need to assign this element to the 0th index. If that is not the case, we first need to copy the old array and get the length of this old array and create a new array that has one more slot because we are adding new items at the end. And for item in, so I'm going to explain what this part is doing. So let's say we have an array 1, 2, 3, 4. We have a k array. And we want to perform append 5. Then what we need to do is first, we need to copy this array, this old array, and initialize, let's say k prime, and it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. It's old k. And k becomes new none, 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 because we need one more space. And after this, from this old k, we copy this value to this new array, like this. And after that, at the last position, n is the number of elements, we put new item. That's what this part is doing. Why do we need to do so? Because we have a fixed size array, and whenever we need to change the size, we need to create a new array. That's why we need to do this part. And under the hood, Python is doing this for us. Okay? So that is our grow array. And as you can see here, this might not work very efficiently. And we are going to improve this version. But before we do that, I'm going to give you one specific example how we can use this array. From my Google Drive, I'm going to read these 5,000 words. So here we have 5,000 words as a text file. And I'm going to read this text file in my Google Drive and then store the words in this text file into a list, which is a grow array. And then I'm going to count the time it takes to store all the values. And to connect to this Google Drive, we just need to import this Google Drive and connect. Then it's connected. Now I can access to my Google Drive files in this Colab. You can do the same if you want. And let's open the file. To open a file, you just need to call this open function. That's all you need to do. And here you need to write down the path of the file. And the path of the file is content drive, my drive. Actually, it is inside 수업 my drive, 수업 자료, EC2202, and lecture slides. And this is the path. And here we are specifying R because we are reading. If you want to open this file to write something, then you better use the W option to write something. Okay. Okay. After this, to count the time it takes, we need to import time. And I'm going to store the words in this file, this one, into our grow array. And to read each line, you just need to call f dot read lines. Then it will return these lines one by one. Very simple. And for each line, I'm going to remove blanks. And our grow array lists, I'm going to append a word. And count the time again. Like this. Then words. And the time it took is t end minus t start. Okay, that's what we need to do. And after that, we need to close the file. Okay, let's run this and let's see how many times it takes. This should be percent. Okay. So it took about 10 seconds. And we need to close the file. Okay. Then let's compare the array we've implemented with that of default Python list. So here, rather than using the grow array, I'm going to use the default Python list like this. And it only takes like 0.08 seconds, much less time. As you can see here, our array, growing array, takes like 10 seconds, whereas the Python's default list takes only 0.08 seconds. And why is our grow rate so slow? Let's analyze why it's so slow. So I showed you that when we want to add 5 items, we first need to create an array with the size of 1. And then we create an item with the size of 2. And then copy this item into this position. And then change this part as well. And in the third iteration, we create 3 nons and copy this value into the first position, copy this value into the second position, and change the third one. And we repeat this process again and again. That is why it's so slow. And the time complexity is going to be for each iteration, like let's say we want to copy 5 items, then we need to copy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items. Therefore, the time complexity is from 0 to n-1, we need to copy k times. And when we calculate this part, this one is similar to n squared. That is the time complexity of our grow array. And how can we improve our grow array? One idea is rather than having 0 memory slot, what about just assigning some specific number like this, 32? And then we keep track of the size. So this will let us where to put the new item. Okay? And get item works the same. And we don't have to care about this first case because we already have some space, so we can remove this first part. And when we need to increase the size of this array, when we reach the maximum or at the end of the list, predefined list. So if the size reaches the size of the internal array, this one, let's say we already have 32 items, then we need to increase the size like this. So we copy the current array into an old one. And then rather than adding 1, we add 32 like this. And then for each old item, we add new item like this. And here we can add the new item here. And add the size of the array like this. Okay, this is the modification. And when we, rather than increasing the size 1 by 1, but we take the step of 32. This is one improvement. Okay. And when we run this again, it takes much less time, like 0.5 seconds. But still, it's much slower than the default Python list like this. Do you have any idea how to improve this further? Any guesses? Yeah, Jaehyun said, what about increasing the size exponentially rather than linearly? So here, rather than adding 32, we can increase the size of array like 2 times like this. That is a good one. And when we make this modification, increasing the array size 2 times every time we fill out our original array, then it takes like 0.01. So it's much faster than the default Python list. Maybe Python list is using smaller number than 2. But this is basically what Python list is working, how it is working, okay? Okay, that was about arrays. And what about strings? I showed you in the Python primer lecture that you can think of strings as just arrays. You can print the length of this A string, and you can get access to certain element at the specified index like this. Okay, so you can just think of strings as arrays. All right, that was about what we need to talk about. And from now on, I'm going to give you some PPP exercises. Maybe 1 or 2. This one is from Amazon's coding interview. So the question is like this. You need to replace element given an array. And you need to replace every element in the array with the greatest element among the elements to its right. So what it means is, in the case of 17, the largest element on the right side is 18. So it gets replaced to 18. And in the case of 18, the largest element on the right side is 6. So it becomes 6, 6, and 6. And in the case of 6, the largest element on the right is 1. And for the last element, it becomes -1. And when you input just one, a list containing just one item, then this one becomes -1 like this. Okay? Think about it on your own. And before you tackle this problem, please send me a PPP message and then try to solve this problem. Okay, let's solve this problem together. This is from one of our students. The simplest way of solving this problem is like len array -1. We iterate through all the items like this. And array I becomes the maximum value among all the values like this. And set the last value as -1. However, this is not time complexity of O(n), because this one takes like O(n), and this one takes O(n). So rather than implementing this one in this way, you need to come up with more efficient way. And this is from Chaeyoon, one of our students. We first count the number of items like this, and first set the maximum value as -1 like this. And we iterate from the back rather than from the front. So we are reducing the indices like this, and the temporal value is the current position value. And at this position, we put the maximum value, and we update this maximum value as we move on, like this. Okay? So the idea, the takeaway message from here is sometimes it's better to iterate from the back side rather than from the front side. Okay? Okay, that was our first PPP exercise. Our second PPP exercise is going to be so this is our second PPP exercise. This one is called spiral matrix. So what it does is it receives 2D array and prints the matrix elements in this spiral order. So when it receives matrix like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 to 12, then the spiral order is 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it goes down 8, 12, and then left 11, 10, 9, go up 5, and then go right 6, 7. So that is the spiral order printing. I guess the time is almost up, so you guys can think about this problem at home, and we can start from this problem in the next class. Okay, let's call it a day. If you have any questions, you can stay here. Otherwise, you can leave now. Thank you for your participation.